Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Podcast Every Day.
We are so happy you are here with us today.
Today, we are talking about showing interest without asking too many questions.
This is a wonderful conversation skill because friendly curiosity is good, but too many questions can feel like an interview.
Exactly, in English, a natural conversation usually has questions, comments, reactions, and a little sharing from both people.
So today, we will teach you how to sound interested without making the other person feel pressured.
You will learn short response phrases, follow-up comments, and ways to share a small detail before asking another question.
This is useful at work, at networking events, in small talk, and even when you are meeting someone online.
We will practice two realistic conversations and then break down the vocabulary, grammar, and tone step by step.
So listen closely and notice how small comments can make a conversation feel warm and balanced.
Let us begin with the language that helps you show interest naturally in English.
Before our first conversation, let us learn why showing interest is not only about asking questions. When people learn English conversation, they often learn many question forms.
That is useful, of course. Questions help keep a conversation going.
But if you ask question after question, the other person may feel like they are being interviewed.
A natural conversation has rhythm. One person shares, the other reacts, then maybe asks or adds something.
So today, our goal is to balance curiosity with comfort.
Our first key phrase is "that sounds interesting." This is a simple reaction that shows you are listening.
For example, if someone says, "I am working on a new training project," you can say, "That sounds interesting."
You can also change the adjective "that sounds exciting," "that sounds challenging," "that sounds like a big responsibility."
This phrase is useful because it gives the other person space to continue without forcing them.
Our second phrase is "I can imagine." This means you understand or can picture what the person is describing.
For example, if someone says, "The first week was a lot," you can say, "I can imagine." Starting a new role can be intense.
Another example is "I can imagine." Presenting to a large group takes a lot of energy.
This phrase is not a question, but it still shows interest and empathy.
Our third phrase is "that makes sense." This means you understand the reason or logic behind what someone said.
For example, "I moved to this team because I wanted more customer contact." That makes sense. This team works closely with clients.
It is a very natural workplace phrase because it validates the person's point.
Our fourth phrase is "I have heard good things about." This shows interest by connecting to shared knowledge.
For example, "I have heard good things about that project."
Or, "I have heard good things about the training team. They seem very supportive."
This phrase gives you something to say without asking another direct question.
Our fifth phrase is "tell me more about that." This is a question-style phrase, but it is open and gentle.
For example, "that sounds like a useful project. Tell me more about that."
It is usually softer than asking many small questions like why, when, where, who, and how many people.
So the key phrases are "that sounds interesting," "I can imagine," "that makes sense," "I have heard good things about," and "tell me more about that."
In our first conversation, Michael meets Nicole at work and shows interest without turning the conversation into an interview.
Now let us listen to Michael and Nicole have a natural workplace conversation with questions, comments, and shared details.
Hi, Nicole. I heard you joined the Customer Insights project this week.
Yes, I did. I just had my first planning meeting this morning.
That sounds interesting. I have heard good things about that project.
It seems promising. The team is trying to understand why some customers stop using the product after the first month.
That makes sense. The first month is when people decide whether the product fits their routine.
Exactly. We are looking at survey answers, support tickets, and usage data together.
I can imagine that gives you a much fuller picture than one source alone.
Yes, and it also makes the project more complex.
I bet when data and customer stories meet, things can get messy but useful.
That is a good way to put it. The numbers tell us what happened, but the comments tell us why it might have happened.
That is really useful. I worked on a retention report last year, and we had a similar problem.
Oh, interesting. What was similar about it?
We had strong usage in week 1, but by week 4, people were skipping the setup steps.
That sounds familiar. Setup is one area we are investigating too.
Tell me more about that. I am curious how your team is approaching it.
We are trying to identify the exact moment when users stop making progress.
That sounds practical. If you know the moment, you can improve the message or the design around it.
Exactly. We do not want to guess too early.
That makes sense. Teams sometimes jump to solutions before they understand the friction.
Yes, and the friction might be small. It could be one confusing sentence or one missing button.
I can imagine. Small details can create big problems in onboarding.
Definitely. That is why I am excited about the project, even though it is a lot to learn.
It sounds like the kind of work where your customer success background will be really helpful.
I hope so. I am used to hearing customers describe problems in everyday language.
That is a valuable skill. Technical teams sometimes need someone who can translate customer frustration into clear patterns.
That is exactly what I am hoping to contribute.
I am looking forward to seeing what the team finds.
Thanks. I will share updates once we have something useful.
Great. And if you want to compare notes with the old retention report, I can send it over.
That would be helpful. I appreciate it.
No problem. I am glad we talked about it.
Let us analyze how Michael showed interest without asking too many questions or making the conversation feel one-sided. Michael began with a statement, not a question. He said, "I heard you joined the Customer Insights project this week."
That is a gentle opening. It gives Nicole a chance to respond without feeling pressured.
Then he said, "That sounds interesting. I have heard good things about that project."
Notice that he did not immediately ask 5 questions. He reacted and added a small comment.
That is a key skill. Comments can show interest just as much as questions can.
Michael also used, "That makes sense." This phrase validates Nicole's explanation.
To validate means to show that someone's idea or feeling is reasonable.
For example, "That makes sense. The first month is a critical time for customers."
That response shows understanding and adds value to the conversation.
Michael said, "I can imagine," several times. This is a useful empathy phrase.
It works well when the other person describes something challenging, complex, exciting, or stressful.
Then he asked one open invitation. "Tell me more about that."
This is often better than asking a chain of small questions because it lets the other person choose what to explain.
A chain of questions might sound like, "When did it start? Who is on the team? How big is it? And what is the deadline?"
Those questions may be fine later, but all at once they can feel intense.
Michael also shared his own related experience with the old retention report.
That made the conversation balanced. Nicole was not the only person answering and explaining.
The big lesson is this: to show interest naturally, alternate between reacting, adding a comment, sharing briefly, and asking one open question. Now let us learn deeper active listening phrases, common mistakes, and better ways to keep a conversation balanced. In the first half, we learned how reaction phrases can show interest without more questions.
Now we will go deeper into active listening.
Active listening means you are not just waiting to speak. You are showing that you understand and care about what the other person is saying.
Our first new phrase is "it sounds like." This phrase lets you reflect what you heard.
For example, it sounds like the project has been rewarding but demanding.
Or it sounds like you are excited about the new role but still learning the systems.
This phrase is powerful because it proves you are listening to the full message, not just one word.
Our second phrase is "I like how you put that." This means you appreciate the way someone expressed an idea.
For example, I like how you put that. The process is messy but useful.
This is a great phrase because it responds to the person's language, not only the topic.
Our third phrase is I have had a similar experience. This shows connection by sharing briefly.
For example, I have had a similar experience with onboarding data. Small details made a big difference.
Be careful. Sharing is good, but do not completely take over the conversation with a long story about yourself.
Our fourth phrase is "that reminds me of." This helps you connect their point to something related.
For example, that reminds me of a project we did last quarter.
Or "that reminds me of something our manager said about customer feedback."
This phrase can move the conversation forward smoothly if your connection is relevant.
Our fifth phrase is "no wonder." This means the result is not surprising because the reason is clear.
For example, you have been preparing for weeks. No wonder the presentation went well.
Or you had 3 meetings back to back. No wonder you are tired.
A common mistake is saying only, really, 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 after everything.
Really can be useful, but if you use it too much, it can sound like you have no real response.
A better strategy is reaction, plus reflection, plus small share.
For example, "that sounds challenging." It sounds like you had to manage a lot of moving parts. I have had a similar experience with event planning.
In our second conversation, Adam and Sky use active listening phrases to sound interested, without asking too many questions. Now Adam and Sky will practice active listening during a conversation about a busy project week.
Sky, you looked busy after the planning meeting. Big week.
Very big. We are preparing the first draft of the onboarding guide, and there are a lot of moving parts.
That sounds challenging. It sounds like you are managing content, timing, and feedback all at once.
Exactly. The content itself is not the hard part. The hard part is making sure each team agrees on what new employees really need first.
That makes sense. If every team adds everything, the guide could become overwhelming.
Exactly. I want it to be helpful, not just complete.
I like how you put that. Helpful, not just complete, is a useful way to think about onboarding.
Thanks. I learned that from my last company. They had a guide with 80 pages, and nobody used it.
I can imagine. Too much information can make people avoid the whole thing.
Exactly. So this time, I am trying to make it short enough to use and detailed enough to be helpful.
That reminds me of a product checklist we created last year. The first version had too many steps, so people stopped using it.
That is a good example. What did you change?
We moved the advanced steps to a separate section. The main checklist became much cleaner.
That sounds like exactly the kind of structure we may need.
No wonder this project feels complex. You are not just writing a guide. You are designing the new employee experience.
That is true. I had not said it that way, but that is exactly it.
It sounds like the guide has to answer practical questions and also reduce anxiety.
Yes, new employees often worry that they are missing something obvious.
I have had a similar experience. When I joined, I did not know which meetings were optional and which ones were expected.
That is exactly the kind of detail we should include.
Small detail, big relief.
I like how you put that. That might become our principle for the whole guide.
Happy to help. It sounds like you already have a strong direction.
I am getting there. Talking it through helps me see the structure more clearly.
I can imagine. Sometimes explaining an idea out loud reveals what matters most.
Exactly. Thanks for listening without making me feel like I was being questioned.
Of course, I was interested. but I did not want to turn it into a survey.
You did a good job. The comments helped more than a long list of questions would have.
That is good to hear. I am trying to practice better listening.
Let us compare simple conversation responses with more natural B2 English for showing interest without over-questioning. A B1 speaker might ask, "What is your project? When did it start? Who is on it? Is it hard?"
Those questions are grammatically correct, but too many at once can feel like an interview.
A B2 response might be, "That sounds interesting. I have heard good things about that project. Tell me more about that."
That version uses a reaction, a comment, and one open invitation.
Another B1 response is really, really, really.
Really is useful sometimes, but repeating it too much can sound empty.
A stronger B2 response is, "I can imagine. That sounds like a lot to manage."
This shows empathy and understanding without asking another question.
Let us talk about softeners. Words like a little, kind of, and seems can make comments feel less intense.
For example, "That seems a little overwhelming" sounds gentler than "that is overwhelming."
You are not deciding how the other person feels. You are gently reflecting what you hear.
A useful hedging phrase is "it sounds like." It sounds like the project has been rewarding but demanding.
This phrase is safer than saying, "Your project is stressful," because maybe the person does not feel stress.
Now a grammar fix. Do not say, "I am interested in that." Say, "I am interested in that."
Interesting describes the thing. Interested describes your feeling.
So say, "That project sounds interesting," and "I am interested in learning more."
Another common mistake is, "Explain me more." The correct phrase is, "Tell me more," or "Explain it to me."
For casual conversation, "Tell me more about that" is usually the most natural option.
One more B2 pattern is statement plus small share plus question.
For example, "That reminds me of a project we did last quarter. We also had too many details at first. How are you deciding what to include?"
That pattern creates balance because you are not only taking information, you are also contributing.
The goal is to show interest with warmth, not pressure.
Let us review the vocabulary, grammar, and conversation strategies from today's episode about showing interest naturally. Today we learned that showing interest is not the same as asking many questions.
A good conversation includes questions, comments, reactions, reflections, and small details from both people.
From the first part, remember "that sounds interesting," "I can imagine," "that makes sense," "I have heard good things about," and "tell me more about that."
In Conversation 1, Michael showed interest in Nicole's project by reacting, adding comments, sharing a related experience, and asking one open invitation.
We also learned phrases like "I bet," "that sounds familiar," "good way to put it," and "I am looking forward to seeing what the team finds."
From the second part, remember "it sounds like," "I like how you put that," "I have had a similar experience," "that reminds me of," and "no wonder."
In Conversation 2, Adam used active listening to help Sky talk through her project without feeling questioned.
We compared B1 and B2 language. B1 asks many direct questions. B2 uses a reaction, a comment, and one open invitation.
For grammar, remember interested describes your feeling, and interesting describes the thing.
Say, "I am interested in that project," and "that project sounds interesting."
Also remember, say "tell me more about that," not "explain me more."
A strong conversation pattern is reaction, reflection, small share, and then one thoughtful question if needed.
The main lesson is simple. You can show interest with warmth, not pressure.
When you listen well, small comments can make the other person feel heard.
That is all for today's episode of English Podcast Every Day.
We hope you feel more confident showing interest without asking too many questions.
This week, practice one reaction phrase before you ask your next follow-up question.
Try saying, "That sounds interesting," or "I can imagine," and then pause for the other person to continue.
If this episode helped you, subscribe and listen again to practice the vocabulary, rhythm, and pronunciation.
Remember, good listening is not silent. It is thoughtful, balanced, and kind.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.